Today I'm building a large floating deck right here. Yes, it is time. We are building a deck at my house. And if you've been following along at all, you know this was always the plan on this end, to build a patio or deck. I just wanted to get a lot of other things done first in my house. I built more bedrooms and bathrooms inside. I recently built the shed out front. So now I figured it is a perfect time to do this. We're coming to the end of the summer, so should have some decent weather to do this. Today it's very hot and humid, but it would be good to get this done for the nice fall weather. And I know the first question I'm going to get is, why are you going with a deck instead of a concrete patio? A lot of times people suggest doing a concrete patio when you're almost at ground level here. I could just do a slab right on the ground and then there would just be one step up to the doors. Yeah, that would be fine, but there's two big reasons I didn't go that route. So to get a decent concrete patio here for how big this is, and doing like a nice stamped concrete so it looks a little better, it probably would have been at least around $15,000 to do that. So the deck is gonna be a lot closer to around $5,000. Part of that is because I'll be doing the deck myself, so that's all materials, and I would not be able to do the concrete patio myself. The second reason is I just really like the feel of a deck over a patio. I like the overall look a lot more, and it will be nice to be right level with the living space so you won't have to step down at all, and then I can do steps off of the deck to the ground. So as you can see here, I do have it roughly roped off. So we're going to be doing 12 feet in this direction off the house. So it's 12 feet and then it's 44 feet long. So it's almost the full width of the house. The house is 50 feet wide in this section. So we're going 44, and the reason for that, just to get to the ends of the doors, you want at least 40. And then from there, it was like probably going to be just a waste of lumber to only do 40 or 42. So I went up to 44, mostly because of the deck boards I'm getting are 16 feet and 12 feet. So basically you get to 44 with two 16s and a 12. So you can see that works out to about 3 feet on the side of each slider. So that one is my bedroom, and then this one over here is to the living room. So that should give plenty of room when you walk out the door. You won't feel like you're falling off the edge. And then as of now, I'm planning to do a stair. It's just going to be one step that you're going to need on this end, and then the other end as well. I could go the whole way around, but I think for now I'm going to leave off this front portion. It's a whole extra 44 feet of a step. So I think for now I'm just going to do the ends. It will only be about a foot off the ground. At the door there, it's about a foot. The ground does fall away a little bit, so I think maybe out on this end it'll be closer to 17 or 18 inches. So it should be just enough to get some good airflow under the deck. And I am planning to do this as a floating deck. Seems like that's the right way to go when you're doing such a low to the ground deck. And then you don't have to worry about attaching it to the house at all, and you're just floating it on top of the ground. So you don't have to worry about drilling down deep holes and doing a foundation like I did the shed over there. So it will more or less float on top of the ground, and then you're not attached to the house at all. And now we can head over and I can show you all of the materials I got. And again, if you've been following along, you saw the shed build I did over the past winter. So that's been working out really well. Have all of my my mowers and my four-wheeler and dirt bike in there. So here are my materials. This is going to be the lumber for the framing, basically the floor system. So what I'm going to be doing is 2x10s for what I'll call the headers or the ledgers. Everyone has a different name for them, but I'm going to do 2x10s. That's the ones carrying the load. And then the joists themselves, I'm going to be doing 2x8s. So that's what you see here. I have about 50 2x8s, and then I only needed 8 of the 2x10s. So that did help with the cost. So all of this lumber was right around $1,000. I thought it was going to be a lot more, so that's really not bad at all. And so here's going to be my basic foundation. So I've got these concrete blocks, these piers. So they are made to fit the 4x4 post right inside there. Then it also has those holes on the side to let water out. This is pretty common to use for a floating deck. And I'm only going to be using this on the far end away from the house, because close to the house, these are actually going to be like too big. So I'm going to be using these blocks right at the house, and that way I can just set my headers right on those blocks, and then I don't have to worry about going to a post and then down to the foundation. It'll just be right on those blocks. Should be really solid. So that's going to be all of the structure. And then over here I have all of my decking already. So I did decide to go with composite. The cost difference wasn't horrible. I mean, it was over double the cost of wood, but I think that'll be worth it just to have a really nice feel and a look, and I won't have to worry about staining. Should last a really long time as well. So what I decided to go with is a TimberTech product. There are a number of brands out there now. I was able to get a decent deal on this, and it's the color I liked. This material was a little over $2,000 for it, and then if I was going to go wood, it was going to be around $1,000. So really not too bad, I think, compared to what I thought it was going to be. Some of the other brands, it would have gone up to $3,000 or $4,000 for the material. And yes, you can see I received these, and a lot of them were actually damaged, but I already got those replaced, and they let me keep the damaged ones, so you can probably use those for another project, maybe for the stairs. So this is the 16-foot, and then back here are the 12-foot. So that's all the material. Of course, I've also got the joist hangers and all the fasteners inside, but now we can head in and I can show you the design. All right, now real quick, I'm going to take you through the design of my deck. So starting off, we've got 2x10 headers, and these are each 11 feet long. That's how I will get to the 44 feet. So then for all of my joists, I'm going with 2x8s. So these are 2x8x12s. I'm going to cut them down a little bit so that the final structure width is 12 feet. So I decided to do it this way to simplify it a little bit. Didn't have to worry about a double header just by going up to the 2x10. So that should be sufficient. And you can also see just how many joists there are because this is the 12-inch spacing. And next up, I've got my 4x4 posts, so I'm using the 4x4s out on this end because this will be more off of the ground than the house side here. So those will sit right inside those concrete piers at each location. So I'm doubling them up where they come together just because it's a lot easier to attach a 2x10 to one rather than try to split it across two. And I'm going to be doing 1/2-inch bolts, 2 at each post, through the 2x10. So this works out to, since they're inset a little bit, basically a 10-foot span for that 2x10. And so now on this end I don't have any because on this side closest to the house it's very close to the ground, especially using this 2x10. So I'm going to be sitting that right on the solid concrete blocks. And now next here I'm going to be doing stairs on this end. So these are the stringers that I'm going to make. It's just going to be 2 stairs because out from this end it's going to be about 21 inches to the ground, so that works out perfect to have about a 7-inch rise on each stair. What I'm also showing is I'm doing a single row of blocking. Don't have to worry about it being perfectly aligned, so I can offset them to make it a lot easier to nail. Still a lot of blocking because of how many joists there are. And now I'll also start with putting the decking down. So I did this just so I could kind of figure out how I wanted my seams to work out. And I did debate on doing like a vertical strip. That is pretty common with composite, to break all the seams at the same spot. But it does end up being a lot more framing underneath to support that sufficiently. So what I decided to do is just to offset them every other. So it works out nice because I'm 44 feet. So that means this is a 16, this is a 16, then this is a 12. So then the next one I just alternate and I do the 16 on that end and then 16 and then 12. So that way I don't actually have any of my butts in a line, any of my seams. So I think that should look pretty clean doing it that way. And then next we can look at a little bit more detail on how I think I'm going to do the stairs. So I think I'm going to just add another, basically I guess a header here underneath. I'll have to attach it on the back side to this rim joist. So that will be the lander for all of the stringers. And then I made those stringers in such a way that it's the right size for basically 2 planks and then with the overhang. And that will give me enough room to then put a vertical underneath that. So like that. Doesn't work out perfect with just the size of the decking and the fact that this is a 7-inch rise. But I'll kind of play with it, see what looks right when I get to that. But then down here at the bottom it does work out nice. And that part is shorter because all of the stringers will land right on a cinder block. So I'm basically designing it that the cinder block will come up 1 inch off of ground level and then be sitting on there. So you basically take 1 inch off of the rise on that bottom step. And then now on the other end, this is basically the back side. I'm thinking I'm only going to need one step because the ground is actually pretty level from the house out. So I'll probably have to move some dirt around, but I think I'm just going to do one step, and then that way I don't really have to build anything crazy. I can just put it right on the concrete blocks. I will have to build it up in a certain way. I'll kind of figure this out as I go to get it up to the right height, but I'll shoot for the same about 7 to a 7.5 inch rise on this. But I'll do it in such a way that I've got just a single stair that will look pretty similar to the front set. So now that I've got my design, it's time to get to work. Alright guys, so I've got the full framing structure done. So I'm standing up here on the hill just so you can see how big this structure is. So it is 44 feet long and the side of my building is 50. So yeah, almost the whole width of the building. Definitely a lot of wood in this thing. So now I can just quickly show you the details of what I showed on the CAD. So I've got the 2x10s for the headers on both sides, and then you can see that I've got the 2x8s. You see it's a little bit smaller, the 2x8s for all the joists. I also did the blocking right in the center, so right at 6 feet. I could stagger them here because it's not important, like the shed was, to have them all in a line because I don't really have breaks on them. This is really just to add some stability to the structure, and it distributes the loads from one joist to another. So it really just gives the deck a more of a solid feel. You could really even do double. I could have done every 4 foot, but I think 6 feet is gonna be fine for this. And then here at the corner posts, I've got 2 1/2-inch bolts. I did add this backing plate here, so that's just another piece of 2x10. That's just to add a little bit more stability to the corners. I thought about doing it everywhere, but I realized it wasn't really necessary at the central posts. The corners need a little bit more stability, so I added that there. You have those 2 1/2-inch carriage bolts going the whole way through the posts, and then here you can see the centralized posts. I did not do the backing plate, but that's totally fine. I've got 2 posts basically right next to each other. I've got the piers buried about halfway into the ground so that they don't move around. I also tamped the ground and I added some gravel in the bottom so it was easier to level them out. And yeah, overall, I mean, it's a pretty simple structure. It was just a lot because it's 44 feet. So I've got the same thing here, central posts, another one here, and then down at this corner, it is a little higher off the ground here. This is basically the low point of the ground. So I've got the same thing with the backing plate and the 1/2-inch bolts. I did add a little bit more bracketry to support my rim joists here because they can't really have a traditional joist hanger. I did use a concealed hanger on this side. So basically the nails are internal to the joist hanger, but I still added another bracket just to get it up to basically the same amount of nails as the traditional joist hangers. And all in all, this was over 800 nails done by hand. Yes, you could probably get a nail gun that can do those through the joist hangers, but mine can't. It really wasn't horrible, but yes, I am pretty tired of hammering. Now looking at the overall structure, it seems like it's pretty flat. I tried to pay attention. It's not gonna be perfect. One of the things I'm dealing with is that some of the joists, like this one, is more dried out, and then the one right behind it is more wet, so it's swelled up. It gives it at least another 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch in the overall height this way, so it's not gonna be perfect. My hope is I tried to position all the joist hangers evenly so that when everything dries out, it should be nice and level. The other thing I did here was I put down the weed barrier. I got one of the thicker ones that you could buy and put it underneath there so I don't have any weeds coming up through the deck. I will be adding another strip along the outside, but I wanted to get that done. So next up, I will start with the decking. So as I said, I have 16-foot and 12-foot sections. So I think what I'm going to do is go 16, 16, 12, and then the one next to it go 12, 16, 16. So that will offset the butt joints. So I think that's a little bit of a cleaner look so you don't have all of your butt joints right in a row. The other thing I will do is add a little bit of blocking, basically sister a 2x4 where I need to, where they will break, because you are supposed to have them break on a full joist. So like right here, I will add a 2x4. So my one board will end there, and then the new one will start and go that way. And as far as fasteners, I'm going to start at the house with these little brackets. So these are L brackets, so you can start, and then from there on out, I'm going to be using these clips. So there's a lot of different options out there, but these seemed like one of the better choices, especially because these are removable. So if you did have to replace one board, or if you had to get under there for any reason, you could remove that without taking all of the decking up. I've never done this before, so we're gonna see how it goes. Alright guys, so I got everything finished up here, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Huge shout out to Austin for helping me the first day putting all the boards down. We got about more than 3/4 of the way done when he was here, so that was really helpful because we were dealing with 12-foot and 16-foot boards. So the biggest trouble was getting that first row in, just because it had to slide and lock into that L bracket. So some of that was a little uneven, so it definitely needed 2 or 3 people to get those all locked in right. But then once we got going, once we figured out how those hidden fasteners work, it went pretty smoothly. At first, I was trying to line up all the boards on the end, so cut them first and put them down, but I realized it was going to be impossible to get that all looking perfect with having all the seams in the middle perfect. So then we just went to not cutting and leaving them all long on both ends, and that went a lot quicker. So then I could go back with that track saw and cut it all flush, which came out really clean. So it was nice. It was my first time using one of those tracks for a circular saw. So the gist of what we did is we put all those hidden fasteners in, and we did a few rows at a time, but we put about basically 1/3 of the fasteners down when we went through the whole deck, and then I went back and then screwed all them down completely. We did get the first couple rows fully locked in to make sure it stayed still. And luckily, yeah, it all turned out pretty straight, so that when I got to the end, it was really parallel with the structure. The only thing I did have to do, it ended up being about half a board, and instead of ripping this board down, I just left it full. And so basically what I did behind here was I added another 2x4 support. And so as you can see, all I did with the fascia is I used more of the decking, but I did use the square edge so there's no groove on top. And I did that because the fascia board that was 12 inches wide, it would have been about $750 for this entire deck because it is pretty big. So in comparison, just to get those square edge boards, it was about $150. So yes, it doesn't cover this whole header out here, but since it is overhung like that, I still think it looks pretty good, and you don't really even notice that. And so over here, I did just a simple single stair. I wasn't sure if I was gonna do any stairs, but it worked out that it was about 14 inches to the top down. So that works out pretty well for a single stair because my rise was about 7.5 inches. So I did have to pull a little bit of dirt over here and bring it down just to make that all level. But yeah, another 8-foot stair in the middle of the 12-foot span, and I think that works out pretty nice. And as I showed before, it was not going to be possible to make it perfectly flat as far as the framing goes, but really looking at it here, only if you're at a very certain angle, you could see in a couple spots a little bit of a wave, and that's going to happen because it is, 50 joists that are not 100% in level, but it looks really nice, and all of the lines are very straight. So I like using that hidden fastener system because it does space all of your boards for you, so they're all very uniform. And again, this is 12 feet. It actually worked out a little bit more than 12 feet because of that last board, and then it is 44 feet long. So I think that looks pretty nice next to my house here, which is 50 feet wide. It's just set in a little bit from the corners, but I also have plenty of area here next to the door. And then over here you can see the first set of stairs I built. So this is the 2 stair, so I actually did the traditional stringers. That worked out pretty well, my first time ever really doing stringers and a staircase like that. So I just did 16-inch spacing on the stringers, and that's totally fine. They don't feel spongy at all. Super solid, and then I just covered the fronts with more of the decking. So you can see it kind of looks pretty uniform going up there to the deck. And same thing over here, we've got an 8-foot wide stair on the 12-foot span. And yeah, that looks pretty nice. At first I thought, going the whole way to the house, but now looking at it, I would have had to pull so much dirt from here, which I wouldn't have wanted to do against my foundation of my house, to be able to level it out, because I did pull a good amount out of here and drug it down to level it all off. And then the last thing I did was I brought some of the rock in. I actually recycled this rock from what was at the house in this area, so I shoveled it into the trailer, and then I brought it back and put it around the deck. Could probably use a little bit more. I didn't go too wide, just went out about almost a foot from the deck. That'll just make it a lot easier to mow around the whole thing, and it gives a nice finished look to it. Now overall, this project cost me a little over $5,000, which I really didn't think was too bad, especially using the composite. And of that, about 1,200 was the framing lumber, and then the rest would be the fasteners and the decking. So it was about 900 nails I put in by hand, just in all the joist hangers, and about 1,200 of those hidden fasteners. And overall, it took me about 11 full days. I did have help for one of those days, like I said, so I would estimate right around 100 hours to complete this. And I don't think that's too bad for just how big this deck is. So that is my floating deck project. I'm really happy to finally have something out here to enjoy in the nice weather. So let me know what you think, and let me know what you'd like to see next.